Hi everyone, and welcome to Elite Rugby SandC podcast. First off, if you haven't already, sign up and join Elite Rugby SandC today. We provide you all your strength, conditioning, speed, and recovery needs. You can try before you buy, so try our 7-day $7 trial to get a taste of what we offer here at Elite Rugby SandC. Sign up to our newsletter and receive free bonus content each and every single week. So take your game to the next level, become a beast, and join Elite Rugby SandC today. Today I am joined on the podcast with Ben Tuita, who is a rugby union athlete, business owner, and one of the best barbers in Australia. Ben has been playing rugby since he was a young boy growing up in Tonga, before he moved over to Australia when he was 18 to live and play rugby. On this episode, we discuss the life lessons rugby has taught us over the years. Ben talks about the Polynesian community connection to rugby and how to create a positive culture. We discuss the importance of strength conditioning, like we always do on the podcast. And Ben also discusses his journey to becoming one of the best barbers in Australia and owning his own business. This was an awesome episode, and I appreciate Ben taking time out to speak with me today. Enjoy. So, g'day, Ben. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. It was all right coming into this, or when I agreed to hop on, it was all right. But now, pretty nervous.
It's all good. The first one's always the hardest if it's your first time doing a podcast, but it's just a natural conversation, and it's really good to have you on today. So, what'd you get up to today?
Not too much. Day off today from the barber shop, which I'm sure we'll get into later on about what I do and stuff. I taught a class at CIT, teach the barber class over there, and then hopped into the gym and then some sauna before rushing in to hop on this podcast.
That's awesome. Sounds like a good day.
Yeah, not too bad.
That's good. So, growing up as a young lad, how did you start playing rugby?
So I grew up in Tonga, and I guess everyone would know in the rugby community that the only sports that we'd play in Tonga is basically rugby and then a little bit of rugby league. Growing up in Tonga, all my cousins played rugby. Everyone in the family played rugby. Like, it's all you did. You got to school early before the first bell to play rugby, and played rugby at recess, lunch, sort of after school. So, that's basically how it started.
That's awesome. I think that, playing before, during, and after school is just something I can remember as well. Like, we always used to play touch footy, as the teachers would like to say over here, but it always turned into tackle, but it was always just something you did. And I think that's where everyone got a lot of skills from, and some of the best players got their skills from was just playing with their mates at lunchtime or before and after school, just chucking the footy around. And it's such good memories.
So that's right. Like, I think I find, like, a lot of the rugby games that I do watch, a lot of commentators always seem to comment on, mainly the Fijians, and then the rest of the Polynesian islands as well, and how skillful, the props are and the forwards. And I put it down to that. Like, everyone's sort of playing touch or some form of rugby from a young age. And it's not as structured down in the islands. So everyone's throwing cutouts or trying to play 5'8", even if you've got the prop physique.
It's just all those 1%ers that all add up to the game and the skills. And just like you said, a lot of the Fijian boys, when you see them on the 7 circuit or just playing 15s, some of the stuff that they can do is just incredible.
Yeah, and I think I put it down again to sort of playing after school and before school and things like that. Like I said, we don't have any academies over there, but everyone's just sort of playing this unstructured, sort of the things that the Polynesian community enjoy about rugby is the sort of, playmaking and breaking tackles and running. And I think, you get a lot of that in the islands, even if we don't have programs like they do here or pathways.
100%. And some of the best tries that you do see in rugby come from that unstructured play, coming from that counter attack when there's been a knock on or there's a kick in play, and just playing what's in front of you. And if you got those skills down packed, and if you've been playing that type of rugby since you're younger, it's just going to come naturally, and you'll see the game a lot better, and you'll score those ridiculous tries that we do see.
Yeah, I think like I don't know if you've seen that documentary, the Pacific Warriors, where the Fijian players sort of when they talk about when they beat Wales at the World Cup, and they sort of said the game sort of fell into the way they like to play. Right, they get more excited when the game goes a bit more unstructured. And sometimes like even though they've got the physical capabilities, the Fijian players are saying when it becomes too structured, like going to set piece and things like that, they can sort of drift out of the game mentally. So
Mm,
I think that's why the Polynesian teams have that sort of draw card with fans, is because that unstructured play, like you said, brings out
mm.
the more exciting aspects of rugby.
It's also such a wild card game when top tier nation such as the Wallabies or New Zealand play a Samoa or Tonga, and they're expected to win, but Tonga or Samoa just throw out this unique style of gameplay, and
Mm.
it can be very challenging for the Wallabies and All Blacks to sort of, I don't know, just get a game plan and actually play the game. Because I remember it was a few years ago now, Samoa beat the Wallabies quite convincingly in Sydney, and they just
Yeah,
played such a unique game, and the Wallabies had nothing. They had nothing to counteract any of it, and yeah, it was just it was a bad day to be a Wallaby supporter because you're expected to win, but it was just incredible to see the Samoans just play this unstructured rugby and have a lot of fun doing it.
I think it was a bad day to be a Tongan supporter as well, because Tonga always wants to be the first one, or definitely would remind other Polynesian islands of when they beat the Wallabies, things like that. Yeah, so low key, like I think like a lot of my uncles and that when Samoa was winning, you sort of low key want Australia to win because you don't want Samoa to have the bragging rights. Yeah, but I remember
Mm,
the game. Yeah.
100%. So, what have been some of your favorite memories playing rugby?
Favorite memories playing rugby. I think most of them have to come, unlike a lot of people on your podcast, I never made it as far as some of the guys on here. So most of my memories came from early on in Tonga playing, when you didn't have the real pressures of or structure in the play. I think it's sort of where a lot of Polynesian kids can sort of fall off or progress further. But definitely mine would be younger, when there's not as many pressures or there's not as much structure in the play. Playing rugby in Tonga was a bit more free flowing, They sort of, there wasn't really any training on game plan and things like that. It was more so just to use your physical attributes. So I think when I think about it, and when I've spoken to a lot of other mates who've played professionally, it's that transition from when rugby is just fun to when it becomes sort of your career or job. It changes a little bit in their minds. So definitely mine's like all my favorite memories would have to come from before 20 or something, playing rugby in the backyard with family and friends, or just school rugby in Tonga, really.
No, it's very interesting that you say that because my sort of thing would be the complete opposite, is trying to counteract the players like yourself, those natural
Mm.
abilities that you have, trying to play structure that makes you a bit tired, and try and go to the side of a shoulder instead of running straight at you and getting put on a highlight reel. So it's very interesting that you say unstructured, whereas growing up it was more structure, play to your strengths, and try and run the bigger boys around so you don't get hit hard by them
Yeah.
and can wear them out a bit.
Yeah, and I think like you see it in I don't know if you watch much of the schoolboys rugby, but definitely I think uh, as rugby becomes more structured and more professional, you've seen the Tongan schoolboys and the Tongan development teams fall a lot, or a lot behind like some of the teams that you wouldn't expect to progress further, like the South American teams. You see Georgia now. Tonga doesn't really feature in any of those sort of under 20 competitions. Like they seem to lose to all these teams like Uruguay and Chile and that. And I think it's because, when I was growing up, that's sort of what you sort of enjoy in the islands. You want people to run straight at you so you can put big hits on. It's almost encouraged in Tonga that you run straight and show that you're more physical. And just things like that, I don't think they don't transfer over to where the game's going. But definitely for me, and like I think like when you watch rugby these days, the Tongan Samoan Fijian teams seem to thrive more when it's, more free flowing, when there's a lot more running involved and not as much set piece or structure. So yeah, all my fondest memories come from, when I was younger. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. So what are some of the life lessons rugby has taught you over your career?
Man, hindsight has to be, a beautiful thing, as they sort of say. For me, I didn't realize when I was in rugby sort of the lessons that it was teaching me, but now I guess we'll talk about this later. Going into owning my own business or barbershop, I realized how important some of those lessons were in rugby. So I think even cliche or simple things like teamwork, I think for rugby shows people visually things that you might need to understand mentally about business or anything in life. I think you probably remember playing rugby and all the fitness sessions where if you leave gaps or if you don't put in an effort to get onto the line or do the suicides or the Malcolms and stick with the team and stick through that in the game, you'll leave gaps that let your teammates down. Little things like that. Sticking to processes, your coaches can come up with game plans, and there's a lot of things that can happen in a rugby game that's so chaotic and in real time where you might start to rely on emotions and go away from the game plan. And then that's the same within life and in business. There's a lot of things emotionally that can make you make decisions that might not be best for your team or for your business. And I think little things like that I didn't realize at the time when I was playing rugby, but definitely now a lot of my structures in place at work have to do with, in hindsight, what I learned from rugby. How can I create little activities or little training sessions within our team that sort of encourage little things that will visually show them, like fitness sessions at rugby or like a moment in the game when things aren't going your way, to try and stick to the process instead of relying on how you feel emotionally. I think those sort of things. You've always, I think, like even listening, I don't know if you've seen John Olongu's documentary, he sort of said rugby is like a fast way of living life. And, when I watched that before, I didn't understand. And now I think most of the important lessons I've learned that I use in life and business now, were transparent in rugby if I look back.
That's awesome. What are some of the things you like to do with your team to build that cohesion and sense of, I don't know, just camaraderie within the group?
So yeah, a lot of things. I think in meetings we'll initially speak about. I think I got this from watching a lot of Eddie Jones and Robbie Deans in rugby. They sort of speak a lot about getting the group to come up with your core values and morals for the team. And they sort of talk about when things get tough, mainly on the rugby field, there's a lot of things that can go wrong where if it's just told to them or spoken to them from an authoritative figure, then they probably won't believe in it. Whereas if they come up with it themselves, they'll more so believe in it because they're coming up with those things. So with the boys at the shop, we sort of sat down initially and we come up with these different values and morals. And then how does that relate to other things in the business, like client experience or things like that they can sort of rely on outside of how they might feel sometimes, As far as exercises, there's not that many things. Like we do team lunches and things like that to sort of build camaraderie. And a lot of the times I throw in little tests for them. I might watch them for 2 or 3 weeks to see how they handle certain situations, like training sessions we have at the moment where every Tuesday they have to bring a client in and then we sort of work through with them on how we can improve their skill. And I think like Eddie Jones with a lot of the teams he sort of leaves it up to them to take responsibility for those things. Like I don't ever want to have to sit over and micromanage everyone saying, have you got, your client for tomorrow's training session or anything like that. I sort of want to build that sort of responsibility for themselves. But there's not as many things, definitely not I can't conceive anything at the moment, like little sessions like we do in rugby to sort of, add to it. You might show me on this podcast or something.
Yeah, who knows? I think that's awesome how you're building ownership of your team, and it's something that you got to do in rugby as well. You can't just, as you said, micromanage and control everything. You need the playing group to be able to take control and ownership of their actions and how they want to sort of play the game, but also how they want to build the team and create that team that is like a brotherhood or a sisterhood, and just be able to own those mistakes, own it when it's going good, when it's going bad, and just, yeah, I think it's a great way to build a really good team, and really get the best out of your players as well. No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think one of the things rugby's taught me as well is getting 15 just random people to play a game, and it's just incredible. If you can get 15 people to come together, work hard, as you said, do those hard fitness sessions, go to the gym, also have some good times off the field as well, and to play rugby, you can pretty much do anything in life, really. It's just a great sport to learn a lot of life lessons, and just listening from you just then, it's awesome to see that you've carried these lessons into the business, and the business is definitely booming.
Yeah, well, I got a story to touch base on that. As I've told you in the shop, I've actually gone back to play rugby, like casual rugby, and it's for Vikings. We had a game against Goulburn 3 weeks ago, and from our perspective, like a lot of the calls weren't going our way, and sort of like life, these are one of those things that I said that can sort of make you go away from your processes. So like you played Vikings, it's very structured. There's a lot of clarity behind your game plan and what you have to stick to. And because we had like 2 tries disallowed in the first half, I didn't see a reason why they should have been disallowed. And some of the boys are feeling like that. And then, we're dominating the contact area, but then we'd give away these penalties, and it just marched Goulburn in to score 2 tries on us. And then from there, a lot of the boys went away from the process. And then it was a good example for me to see visually. Like I said, visually, it's not just spoken about like a business class or having to learn it in life. You could visually see us start to go away from what we were taught at training or the processes, and start to play a little bit individual. And, weren't getting anywhere. At halftime, I think we got a 2 yellow cards as well. At halftime, the coaches were just reminding us that we've got structures in place, and we just need to go back to that, no matter what the ref's doing. We did that, and we were able to claw our way back to a draw, which I thought was pretty impressive, because a lot of the teams I played with, or even in life, when you're dealing with business, things like that are always going to happen in life, where, things are happening in such a way that you feel like nothing's working out. And then you start to rely on emotions, or like that game, playing individually, like doing a little chip and chase out of your 22, feeling like you need to save the team. But having real clarity on some processes outside of how you feel, I think, like that rugby game and like rugby teaches you, has always helped me in business. There's a lot of times in business that, the way life's happening, where you feel like I need to do something, or you start to feel erratic or make emotional decisions. And, it never works out. It's just trusting the process. And if the process doesn't seem to work, then you go back and sit down and rewrite it, But those sort of things, I think I wish I understood earlier when I was playing rugby, not now, but, at least the lessons there for business.
And if you got those structures in place and the values of the business or the team, it makes it a lot easier to get back on the train, like, if that makes sense. Like it's easy to get back onto the process and trust that again, especially if you've gone away from the process. And if you got those values and structure, it definitely makes it easier to remind yourself, oh yeah, that's what we were talking about, or I do remember us having that talk about these certain values. Let's get back to those values, and really make the team better. And again, you'll make the performances out on the field or in your business better as well.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you've had the opportunity to play for different rugby clubs. How important is culture and a sense of community within the club for you?
I can't say honestly that I've understood the community aspect of it, or maybe that's because I don't spend much time with the clubs I play for outside of training and the games. But with culture, I don't know if this is answering the question correct, but I was actually talking to some of the boys about that. And I think for me, even though this is just a casual season, playing for the Vikings, I've noticed, a strong culture, and it's built. I've just seen a lot of games that in previous clubs that I played for, we would have got, done by 50 points, like that Goulburn game, because a lot of people would give up on that process or give up on the understanding you have on the game plan. I just think Vikings has little structures in place where uh, it'll weed out people that don't want to put in the hard work, and I hear a lot about that before I got to the club. You always hear negative things about there being too much political structures happening there that don't give people the opportunity. But I think since I've been there, it's definitely I think it's important to have a club that doesn't allow people to, not put in all their effort for the club and for your mates that are there. And this is definitely a club, like, it's unfortunate that it's like my last year playing footy, but I wish I was a part of the club earlier, because just the structures they have behind training, behind having professional trainers there, physios there. And like, I think example for me is I've been in rehab a long time, and I think I did the rehab out in the field, and they said, "Oh, you got to go in the gym and do this sort of work." And sort of when I got there, I think like, I was like, I'm older, it doesn't really matter, I'm just going to do whatever. Well, they've actually already communicated by radio to the person in the gym that this is the sort of things that I have to do. So when I got there, like I was forced to do probably the most fitness I've done in 4 years. And I think like little things like that, a lot of people probably wouldn't want to show up every Tuesday and Thursday and get flogged like that. But if you have resilience, you'll definitely stay involved with the club. So I think, there's definitely elements of respect there for the trainers and stuff. There's a lot of other clubs where I've seen players not show respect to the trainers, not show respect to coaches and things like that. And I think it's because there's other things happening that invite people of those sort of morals and values into the club. So for me, I think it's important that you create an environment that is only going to keep hardworking, honest people, and definitely people that are involved with your values, like you were sort of saying earlier. I think if the club has a clear vision of what those morals and values are, and they set up their training or their coaches, players to be in alignment with that, then they'll weed out the people that might have a negative influence, which is what I've found at other clubs. There's been good people at other clubs, and then there's probably people that ruin the culture a bit. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's something we were talking about in the barbershop lately.
Yeah, it definitely answers the question, and it's really cool to see that work ethic is still there. So I played for Vikings back in 2014 was my first season, and this is coming on nearly 10 years post that. And it's really cool to see the hard work culture is still there. So when I got there, one of my first gym sessions, just because my Ben, who's on the podcast, Ben Norcott, he brought me down to have a look at the club, and he's like, you can go in there and do a gym session. And I was busted at the time. I did my ankle, so I was just doing some upper body stuff. And I got to meet Rodney Iona for the first time, and Lixley Leofano, Christian's older brother. And I think Jerome was in there as well. I can't remember his last name. And just seeing them work hard and being welcome, like really welcoming to me, made me want to come there. And also seeing just people who were the same age as me out there on the field working hard was really, really cool. And yeah, it's just great to see a culture where they want people to work hard and put the work in for each other, because that's going to show out on the field. And we're there for one another when the times are really tough, and we celebrate together when the times are good as well. So yeah, it's really cool to see that culture is still continuing on at a club that I do hold very close to my heart.
I wish I was there earlier.
That's good. So following up from that question around culture and community, the great thing about rugby is learning and embracing different cultures within the club. Majority of the rugby clubs I have been with have had a strong Polynesian culture and community. In your eyes, how important is it to have a strong Polynesian culture and community within rugby clubs?
I think if you just start at how influential Polynesian people are in rugby, I can't remember the number, and I don't want to say, give fake stats on your podcast. But it was a ridiculously high number of how many Polynesians were just in the rugby league under 20s comp, and then even for union, I think they play an important part, and unfortunately, I feel anyways, they haven't progressed with the rest of the developing countries. There's a lot of countries who are developing a lot faster, where I feel like you can almost argue Polynesian teams are going backwards. I think for me, definitely lessons in the barbershop I found is that you can't get the best out of everyone by giving everyone the same sort of, diagnosis or giving them the same information. I've definitely seen because I understand Polynesian culture, you're not going to get the best out of them if you don't know how to communicate to them, and I think little things like I was reading Graham Henry's book a couple of years ago, and he told me, or not told me, but said in the book, he mentions that before a game he would sort of talk about or try and rev the boys up with an inspirational speech. I guess he got it from movies and things like that. It wasn't until Tana Umanga came up to him and sort of asked him, like, who's the motivational speeches for? And Henry says in the book that he was sort of taken back. He didn't understand, never thought about it that way. Umanga went on to progress and say that, a lot of the Polynesian boys in this team, which if you look at the All Blacks, probably, 14 out of the starting 15 have a Polynesian background. For them, they don't get anything out of it. It almost makes them feel like, it's makes them feel a bit off, going into a game. I think I've seen that in a lot of the teams that I played for, even at Vikings, when they try and set up professional things like getting players to come to, sort of talk on nutrition and things like that. They sort of take it as a joke and think it's funny. So I think there's definitely ways that you can communicate or have to find a way to communicate to the Polynesian boys to get the best out of them. Culturally, there's things at home, definitely in the barbershop, that I'm aware of. When I was brought up in a Tongan home, you weren't to look at your parents in the eye. There was no eye contact because that was very, rude or offensive. And you definitely don't speak. You're not really ever given opportunities to advise anyone. Definitely in your house, if you're the youngest, you're not the oldest, your father will always be. So I think when they come into rugby teams, a lot of coaches can just think that they don't want to participate, or they don't want to give any input in the team, or, they're not interested, when really it might be things like how they were raised at home, So I think it's definitely important, I think, for coaches that probably have players that are earmarked to be really great, to try and find different ways to communicate to these boys, And I think you were talking about it. I think you sent it in the email to me. Things like Polynesian culture or Polynesian round, I think is a perfect way to give some of the players a voice to be confident and show how much leadership they do have. Those things are really great. But I also think it's also, I don't know how far coaches and clubs want to go, but understanding what the culture is like, so that they can better understand how to communicate and get these boys to participate and be the leaders that they can be within the club.
I love that. I didn't know that about the Polynesian community growing up in the house. So I think that's awesome. And if you're a coach who happens to be able to coach a Polynesian individual, and you probably don't understand that why they're not looking at you, because in my eyes, looking at me would be respectful, whereas if you have your head down looking at the ground, maybe you're not really listening. So it's really cool to learn that and say, oh no, they're actually really listening. They're probably listening with intent and really taking in what you're saying. But if you can understand their story, then you can coach them to the best ability, and you can get more out of them. Whereas if you're just sort of stuck in one way and like, oh, he's not doing that, or she's not really listening to me, like what's wrong with them? That's just not the right way to go about it. And if you learn more, then just like I've been saying to everyone lately, really, is if you can understand that person's story, it goes a massive way to getting the best out of them.
Yeah. Well, in the shop, we've got certain aspects of, we have to deal with a lot of people. We're in communication with a lot of people, with clientele, um, greeting clients, performing a consultation with the client, and then a post consultation afterwards. And I think what I've noticed, like a lot of us in the shop are Tongan, so I've already known right away, having talks with a lot of them, is how can we best get these things out of them, because a firm handshake and eye contact, like you said, in the Australian culture is respectful. Whereas if you feel like it's too rude for you to put your hand down, your heads down, and you don't want to ask too many questions in the consultation, you have clients that probably feel like you're not confident in what you're doing. So it's been good to even have that knowledge for a barbershop. I definitely think, like you said, it would be beneficial for coaches if they start to take those sort of things on board.
Mm. And yeah, that's awesome. I definitely agree with you in terms of having a Polynesian round. It wasn't something until I got to grade rugby and playing with Vikings that I got to experience this, because at school it just wasn't a thing because you're a Catholic school and I don't know, it's just not a thing.
Uh,
So having these Polynesian rounds, we got to try some really, really good food. And it was a massive,
mm,
massive feed, and it was just a really good time and some great music. And you got to wear your cool button-up top that was a Polynesian top, and yeah, it was just a really good experiences. And all the clubs that I've been to have had something like that, and it's been really cool to interact and get to understand their culture. So if person's from Samoa trying their food, or from Tonga trying their food, and just understanding that, it just makes me feel like I'm connecting with them more, and it's just growing the culture within the club. And every time I've done it, I've loved it. I really
mm.
enjoy it. And I think it's also cool. So my last rugby club, West, they raised money for Tonga. So when Tonga had those natural disasters, it was a great time for the club to come together and raise money for a good cause, because they recognize that the Tongan community has had such a massive influence on their
Mm.
culture in the club. So it's really cool to see when something goes wrong that they also give back when times are tough. It's not just when times are good, they also give back, yeah, when times are
Mm.
tough. So yeah, it's just a great way to acknowledge the Polynesian community. And yeah, the clubs that have done it, I've really enjoyed my time there, and it's just made the club better. Hi everyone, we just wanted to take a break from this episode. We hope you are enjoying this episode so far, and also all the content we have produced. We appreciate all the support from our listeners and followers so far. If you haven't already, sign up to Elite Rugby SandC newsletter today. We provide you free, exclusive content each and every single week to our subscribers. Link in the bio. Remember to like, subscribe, and share Elite Rugby SandC on social media to all your friends and families. So thanks again for your support, and now back to the episode.
And you're also giving these players' families an opportunity, like you said, to the food and things like that, giving their mothers an opportunity to get involved with the club as well. Which is Polynesian culture is all about family. So if you can find ways to do that, you only strengthen your ties with those families, right?
100%. So for everyone listening or watching on YouTube, and yes, we do have a YouTube channel if you want to go there and give us a like, subscribe, and follow on that one. So today, we're not, obviously, as you have been listening, we're not just talking about rugby here. We're also talking about Ben being a barber. And hands down is one of the best barbers in the game in my eyes. And a lot of people would say that as well. So when did you start cutting hair, and when did you say to yourself, I want to become a barber, but I also want to become one of the best to do it?
6 years ago that I started, or when I made the decision to do barbering. So I think growing up in Tonga, like I said, you're playing rugby, but also there's a bit more now, but back then there definitely wasn't any, you had to be more self-reliant. So there wasn't barber shops, so there's not like a Sparky that you can call up, or plumbers. A lot of people learn things on their own. So I always had like a bit of, always dabbled with it a little bit, but it wasn't until like 6 years ago. So I think 2016, 2015, yeah, is when I started, decided like this is what I want to do. And yeah, I guess we'll talk about it more, but rugby sort of helped me learn how to pursue something, with more professionalism and with more intent. I think rugby, I didn't have those attributes or knowledge when I was trying to pursue rugby, but I definitely learned a lot of lessons from not being able to go as far as I wanted to. And when I got into barbering, I sort of put all those lessons into that, and it's been good now. I won the Australian Barber Award this year, so I think a lot of the things tie into everything. A lot of those lessons you get from rugby.
100%. I think it just reminds me of myself as well. At school, I just didn't really want to be at school. All I wanted to do was just play rugby, and I just really loved it. And then once I finished school, I was like, shit, what do I want to do? I don't know what I want to do. And ended up pursuing a career in like SandC and health and fitness, and all those lessons that I've learned to put hard work in and to see the results has come from rugby. Because I remember going to grade. I spoke about this in the last podcast episode. Coming to grade rugby, I was 110 kilos, so I was a bit overweight. I wasn't really happy, and then I did all that hard work, and I dropped down to 100, and then I was playing around 103, 105, and it was just the best time of my career. Like I worked hard and I could see the results straight away. And that's definitely come across to my career now, being an S&C coach, of putting that hard work in. You're going to see the results, and it's going to take some time. But if you trust that process, the results will come. And rugby's definitely taught me that.
Yeah. Well, that's actually what I wanted to do before. I was working public service, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And S&C coaches, like we've spoken about in the shop, was actually the first thing I wanted to pursue. I dabbled in that for a little bit, but once I realized, kudos to you for all the hard work you're putting in. Once I realized how much effort it was going to take for a little return, I think for me at the time too, I'm older, so I was like, do I want to do this, or should I just pursue the barbering? And went down the barbering path.
It's definitely a good path that you went down, because you're doing an amazing job, and it's definitely definitely is my favorite place to go get a cut.
All right, thank you.
So you've had the opportunity to cut many great athletes' hair over the years. Who have been some of the most memorable athletes to come through?
Well, I have to shout out Rodney Younger from the Brumbies. He trusted me before I actually went away and did my barber training. He was always giving me the opportunity, plugging some of the Brumbies boys to come and help out. So big shout out and kudos to Rodney. But I have to say, it had to be Richie Mo'unga, which Rodney set up again. The Crusaders boys came down and hit him up asking like who's a barber to get down to, like who can we contact here to get a haircut, and Rodney threw my name out there. So I'd like to say it's Rodney, but probably Richie Mo'unga was a pretty cool experience. Like I think just the team that he plays for, being an All Black and being a very good All Black, and me loving rugby so much, you're always gonna get a little bit starstruck seeing guys like that. Definitely Richie Mo'unga would probably be the biggest one out there.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the best players in world rugby, and has been for the last probably like 4 or 5 years. And it was great to see him play the other week in the starting number 10 jersey. And it's something that we've talked about as well, that I think this year Richie should have been the starting 10 for the All Blacks, just because of the form and how well the Crusaders have been playing. And he just has that X factor. Not saying Bowden Barrett's not good. It's just, I think Richie has been a bit better this year, and it was really good to see him start last week and put a good performance in.
Yeah.
So a quote that I found was, never underestimate the power of a barber. And I 100% agree with that quote. So you have a superpower being a barber, because a person can be having a shit day and just things aren't going right, but you can change that mood by having a really good conversation with that person and understanding the story and provide advice, or just listen to them, because some people just need someone to listen. And you make them feel so much better by getting a fresh cut as well. If you ever get a fresh cut, you feel so much better about yourself. You feel confident. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think teaching the class today at CIT is something that I spoke about. And I think a lot of barbers don't realize how much potential they have in their career, how much they can do, how much they do affect people, like you were talking about. yeah, you just come across so many different walks of life. You know, we learn a lot as barbers as well. I think, you know, every client I'm learning, you know, like when you come into the shop, I'm learning about different strength and conditioning techniques, or even team building, you know, the knowledge you've had. Even if it has nothing to do with that, you reading a book and passing the knowledge on from there. So I definitely think yeah, like it's one of the biggest things that I'm teaching at the moment is for barbers to take ownership and responsibility for upskilling so that they can perform a better service for the clients, and realizing that clients are looking for that out there, because there are a lot of shops at the moment that sort of treat barbering like a time limit thing. You know, how fast can I get this guy in and out? Whereas you can build such strong relationships with people. You know, it's such a unique job. I guess you would understand it with SNC. You know, you're not just performing an actual technical skill, but you're getting to know these people, and you know, be multiple different things other than just being a strength and conditioning coach or a barber. You could be their therapist. You know, you could become one of their best mates. You know, and like you said, little things like a haircut changes people's mood drastically. So yeah, I definitely think it's got a lot of positives to it. It can be a negative experience too, because it's one of the only jobs that you get judged in real time as you're going along, you know. But yeah, definitely the best decision I've ever made working in barbering, especially if you put that time and effort into your skill and consultation, things like that. You can have a lot of amazing experiences. You know, at the public service, I think you're getting a lot of work in the middle or at the end or at the beginning. You never see the whole process of that service or whatever you're doing. Could be an email that you're passing on or an email that you're giving information to, but you're never a part of the whole process. And I think one of the biggest rewards of barbering is that from start to finish, I'm seeing the beginning of a project and the end. And it's happening pretty quick, you know, from 30 minutes to an hour. I get to see that out the whole process from its beginning stage to the completion, and having that client, you know, be happy with the result and tell you you've done a good job, you know, is pretty rewarding feeling. Like there's not many jobs where you can get that every 30 minutes to an hour, getting congratulations for your work. You know, there's not many jobs out there like that. And not just the congratulations on your work, but it could be advice or a listening ear where you've helped someone out mentally, you know. So I think yeah, there's definitely a lot of positive things that can come out of barbering that you can't get in many professions.
100% agree with that. I love that. That's awesome.
Mm.
So what advice do you have for people wanting to become barbers?
I guess, again, going back to a lot of the classes I teach, for me, I think you have to have intent on what kind of barber you want to be, so that there's more clarity on the journey that's going to happen ahead. For me, I knew right away. I read a book called Good to Great, and it was actually harder than I thought, but it actually asks you to do something that you believe you can be the best in the world at. And I don't think it's really about you competing with other people. It's just you want to do something that you believe you can be that good at. And it actually took me a while. I read the book and I was like, well, I want to be the best barber in the world, but I couldn't say it to myself in the mirror. I couldn't even write it down. It took like a few days to be able to even look at myself and take myself seriously. But I think in doing that, and this is what we talk about in the shop as well, in doing that, writing down I wanted to be the best barber in the world, it created a lot more intention in the things that I was, or created boundaries in the things I was willing to accept and not accept in any experience. So if I had I think when I wrote that, I started out as an apprentice at a barbershop here in Canberra. And there were just little things that I didn't agree with. And it was then and there that I realized that if I wanted to have these sort of experiences, my boundaries didn't allow me to stick it out there. I actually went overseas to get training from people that were sort of highly spoken about in the industry as being the best. So I think like having intent, my advice to barbers is to have intent of what kind of barber you want to be, the experiences you want, so that there's more clarity around your boundaries of what you accept and what you want to pursue. And I think everything that I do, from opening up the shop to hiring staff and things like that, there's a lot of intent and care, because I do want it to be this monumental, great thing. And it's not really about it ever getting there, but more about that journey along the way, And again, those things I think came from rugby and even SNC stuff. When I wanted to do that, I always had intent of finding out who's got the experiences that I want.
That's awesome. I love that. If you think that what Ben just said was just talking about barbershop, it's or just being a barber, it's not. It's literally anything in life. I think if you haven't written any advice down from what he just said, then you should be, because I'm taking mental notes right now. That was awesome. I love that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Now, it wouldn't be a rugby and SNC podcast if you didn't ask this question. So, how has strength conditioning helped you in your rugby career? Sorry, and what have you learned over your career as well?
SNC, I think I didn't really. It was my last year of footy. I was playing first grade for East. It was my last year of footy that I realized I wanted to have a good crack at having, not trying to pursue further in my career, but definitely wanted to have a better experience out of my rugby. And then it was then that I sort of realized the sort of beautiful thing of having curiosity. So like we've spoken about, when you're in the shop, I sort of tried to find out who was training the All Blacks and the Wallabies and guys like that. And I think back then it was Ashley Jones. I don't even know if that's true, and I don't want to say things aren't true, but Ashley Jones is a name that sticks out to me. And it was the first time that I started to realize, different things of having that, like talking about intent again, watching and reading Ashley Jones, and then finding the Elite FTS website with the archives in there, and Louis Simmons, like we've spoken about, or Buddy Morris, and guys like that, sort of made me realize how to train for a sport. And again, going back to having intent and having boundaries of what you're willing to accept and not accept. I think when I was coming up, it was all about, doing a 3K jog. And when I found these guys, I realized like I can structure my program in a way. I think structuring my program in a way, or even like working with you and stuff, like realizing like where I was weak in certain movements, definitely helped me gain more confidence on the field, because I was moving this way in the gym with intent. So it gave me more purpose or more confidence that I could perform those movements out on the field. I think for me, I don't know if this is true, you can tell me if it's wrong, but Chris and I always joke about this. When we were training to go back for one game last year, we were doing the Louis Simmons Westside Barbell program. And I remember we were doing box squats with 25% band tension at 50% of your 1 rep max. And it ended up being like heavier than a prop would be, heavier than a prop. So Chris and I were like looking at each other in the gym. We're like, if we can squat this in under a second, we're doing 3 reps in under a second, we can definitely whack like any prop out there. Now, it might be faulty science, but during the game, I think going back to your question, like, because we had that sort of confidence from strength and conditioning, it gave us more confidence on the field, because you're preparing in a more professional, more intent way. Life lessons from strength and conditioning, I think going back to what we've spoken about earlier, is just process, you might not get those lifts, but I can't get emotional and change the numbers, like especially on a strategic program like Louis Simmons, it's got percentages and things that you need to work to. And, there's days that you'll feel like you should lift heavier, or there's days that you feel like you might want to lift less, but having those sort of objective numbers outside of how you feel, and sticking to those things is probably the biggest lesson that I've taken from strength and conditioning. And it goes back to what you said, a lot of these principles that we learn in rugby and strength and conditioning also transfer over to the barbershop and barbering. And I've structured my whole business based off a lot of things I've learned in the gym and on the rugby field.
I love that comment about strength and conditioning building your confidence to be able to play, because there's probably a lot of kids and young teenagers who you feel like you're not the biggest player out in the field, and you get dominated a little bit in certain areas. And if you can learn to follow a good strength and conditioning program, which allows you to get stronger, fitter, faster, but in a good controlled way, not just blowing up overnight, you can then apply that force to the game and you feel more confident, and then you can start enjoying the game as well, because no one wants to be the kid getting run over or you're just getting dominated and everything like that. So I'll definitely 100% agree. It raises your confidence up so you can continue to play the game. And it was definitely the same with me. Like, my confidence was a bit down going my first year in Colts, because I was like, oh, I'm playing kids a year older than me. This is quite intimidating. But it wasn't until like a couple of games in that more like half the season in, that I realized I'm actually strong enough and fit enough to match these guys that I'm playing against. And if I didn't have that S&C program, I probably wouldn't have had that confidence, and I probably would have just continued to be like, oh, I'm a bit scared to take that hit up or make that tackle. So yeah, I definitely agree with what you just said then. So a new let's say segment on the podcast that we introduced last week with Matt Frawley from the Raiders was Triple H. So a hardship, hero, and a highlight. So this is getting to know you better. So first off, hardship. Can you think of a hardship in your rugby career that stands out, and how did you get through this hardship, and what did you learn as well?
I think I didn't learn the lesson immediately, and it's unfortunate that I didn't learn the lesson during playing rugby, but the lesson definitely has helped me now with barbering and running a business. And the thing is that when I was younger, I was always faster and stronger than everyone when I was younger, which is a common theme with a lot of Polynesian kids. It's a common theme with most of my cousins, and sort of always earmarked to go and do bigger things. So I think, like, even though I didn't know it, and it's very easy to be humble and it's very easy to accept compliments when things are going good, when they're great. It wasn't until I came over to Australia for grade rugby out of school. And the unfortunate thing is I never played, like I said, in Tonga, there was no structure or anything. And I came over to Sydney to play for Randwick. And I think I was always one of those players. My coach at East, John Ross, he played Wallabies, he always said things like, I had all this skill and talent at training, and he's like, if you could just find a way to put that into the field, to the game. And I think those sort of things got my confidence got down when I was young and I came over for Colts, because I'd been told my whole life that I was always the best player in every team. You know, I knew secretly in the back of my mind, I knew any team I went to, I would play any position that I wanted, you know. And when I came over to Australia and played for Randwick, I slowly started getting dropped down to Colts. You get dropped down the grades, and then you're getting moved from your preferred position to other positions. And for me, I didn't know how to handle the adversity, so I left the club before the season was over, and decided I was going to look for a new club. I ended up in Canberra, and same thing happened. I'd end up at a club, I would get the role that I wanted, and then after the first trial game, I'd get dropped down the grades and then moved around in different positions, and then I'd leave again. So I think the hardship for me is, like, I didn't know how to handle adversity. And I think now, with the things we've spoken about on this podcast and with business, is there's going to be multiple things like that game in Goulburn that I was talking about that make you feel like things aren't working out, and you can rely on emotions to sort of deal with the problem, or you can ride through that adversity, like the yellow card, like the ref blowing the whistle every 5 minutes against you, and just trust that the process is going to work. And that's happened a few times now. Like, I would never think I'm only playing, fourth grade, and I haven't always got a starting role. Previously, I would have probably left the club, to go to another club, and now my mindset, sort of like the values and the morals I've written down on paper for business, have sort of just transferred over. Is that I'm first trying to do what's best for the team, and then try and find out ways through communication what I can do better, and then in those processes, the rest will take care of itself, because that's how it's happened in barbering. Barbering hasn't always been a smooth ride, but if I trust the process, it just seems to be a byproduct. There's always success at the end of the road, like the award that I won this year. And if I was asked how did I win the award, it would be what I've told you right now. That it hasn't always been this smooth journey. There's been a lot of times where I've questioned my skill level as a barber. But yeah, and that all came from rugby, is realizing how to trust the process and stick to things outside of how you might feel emotionally. Maybe open ways of communication with coaches of why aren't you getting these opportunities, you know? And instead of running away from the problem or the hardship, taking ownership, you know, for what the coach is giving you, and showing them that you can improve on those little things, you know, that they've asked you to.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. That's awesome.
Mm.
So who is your hero and why is that person your hero?
I would have to say my grandmother. So she's still in Tonga, and like a lot of Polynesian cultures, I was very close knit with family. My grandma raised us, and she's raised me and my brother, and then she's also raised some of our other cousins and stuff. And I think it's not until you get older that you realize how much effort and sacrifice goes into raising kids. So I think I've done all right for, you know, a single lady raising a bunch of kids, especially in a country like Tonga. You know, we don't have the same opportunities or the same access to information that we do here in Australia. And sometimes I catch myself thinking, like, you know, I've opened up this shop, I'm running a business. You know, it's done well. We won some awards this year, Chris and I just think for a lady in Tonga to raise me in a way where I've been able to achieve things like this, sometimes I'm pinching myself, because I'm like, you know, when I got to Australia, I didn't even know how to open up a bank account, which is hard for a lot of people to believe. But when I got here, I had to ask my uncle who lived here. I was like, you know, I don't know how to open up a bank account, and this job says I need a bank account. You know, didn't know how to go and get a license, like things like that. And to see how far I've come with not a lot of information behind me, I think I'd have to give you know, all that to her, like, and the values and morals that she raised us with.
That's incredible. That's awesome. She sounds like a wonderful lady.
Yeah.
So highlight, what is a highlight that stands out in your rugby career?
Hold on. Highlight in my rugby career, I think then I have to say just playing fourth grade for Vikings. It's probably been the most it's like we've spoken about in the shop, it's the most fun I've had in a long time, probably before I left Tonga, you know, when I was playing as a kid. And I think that just comes back to how I view the game and how I view life now, you know, and some people are equipped with those things at a younger age. Unfortunately, I wasn't equipped with being able to see the game that way, you know, from a more from an aspect of how to carry yourself, you know, not sort of playing the game, but more of an aspect of how to hold yourself accountable and things like that. I just wasn't equipped or didn't understand those things when I was younger. Whereas now it's been a lot of fun, you know. I think this podcast will do some youngsters a lot of good if they can, you know, get more information like this out there for them, especially, you know, I'm pretty sure you've seen it in your time with SandC, seeing a lot of talented kids that probably could go a lot further than where they're at if they could understand some of these principles. Yeah.
100%. That's awesome. So what other advice, because that was some really good advice then, do you have for up and coming rugby athletes?
Yeah, I think going back to what we spoke about in this podcast is first writing down with some intent of what you want. I think if anyone's ever or finding out information on how people who have achieved the success that you want, how they've done it, whether that's reading a book. You know, I read a lot of books on a lot of coaches, watching documentaries. There's a lot of documentaries out there that Richie McCaw and Dan Carter have books and documentaries out at the moment. And it's just getting insight into how they view life and the game and trying to understand how you can adapt some of those principles. You know, it's not all about the skill and everything. It's important to have the skill, but I think the skill can be sort of misplaced if you don't have those sort of attributes as a human being. I think we've heard about it a lot. The All Blacks always say, great people make great All Blacks. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of guys who you've watched in Super Rugby who are great athletes and great players, but they never get to the All Blacks. You know, there's a few of those over the years that you could probably think about. So I think, I would have had a better career if I understood some of those principles, So for any youngster out there, writing intent of what you want to be, what you want to achieve, and then working backwards from there. How do I become that person? How do I instill those values? How do I instill those morals? And those things, I think, will sort of the motivation and the discipline to do the extras, find strength and conditioning coaches like yourself, watch rugby games to learn, ask coaches what you can do better. All those things will be a byproduct of the initial things that we just spoke about.
I love that, and definitely agree. It's like, and like a key advice I like to give people as well is, if you're going to go play rugby after school at a certain club, go have a look at what that culture is and the community and how hard that team trains. And if it's something that aligns with your values, awesome, go there. But if it doesn't, do you think you can become a better player and also add value to that team? Because if that club doesn't really have a good culture around training or anything like that, you're probably not going to progress as a player. And you can go there if you just want to have fun, 100% go there. But if you're wanting to try and make it in rugby and really have a good career, try and find that club or organization that aligns with your values and can also make you a better person, but you can also bring something to that team as well. And that's just something that I got out from what you were just saying then. And just something I love to tell young athletes when they're starting to finish school and like, oh shit, where should I go play rugby? I'm just like, just find somewhere that can help you become a better athlete, but you can also help their club as well. So that's all my questions for today. I think we covered a lot, and it was great to understand your story a lot more. And I've definitely learned a lot from this podcast, and I've really, really enjoyed my time getting to talk to you again. Where can listeners find you on social media?
So the Instagram is where I'm most active, and it's at Benjamin Tuita, Tuita. That's the handle for Instagram, and that's basically where they can find me. Or the Boy and Co. Actually, this is embarrassing. I don't know the Boy and Co. on the handle on Instagram. Chris is always changing it. But Benjamin Tuita on Instagram is where they'll find me, and I've got links all to the business page. Either that, or I'm trying to just keep all the clients to myself.
Just trying to get the following for yourself. I did just search it up on Instagram. Then it's just boy.and.co, and you'll see some pretty good mugs with some pretty good cuts up on there on that page. So thanks again, Ben, for joining me today. It's been awesome, and I know everyone will get a lot out of this podcast. And I'm glad I mentioned this last week when I was getting my cut that I wanted to bring you on. It's been awesome, and thank you again.
No worries. Thanks so much for having me.
So thanks for tuning into another episode of Elite Rugby SandC podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and rate Elite Rugby SandC on Spotify, YouTube, and follow us on Instagram. Sign up to become a beast today via the link in the description or via Instagram page. Also, sign up to our newsletter and receive free bonus content each and every single week. So don't wait, make that good decision and join Elite Rugby SandC today and take your game to the next level.